Good morning, and welcome to Elizabethtown Church of the Brethren, where we practice peace, service, and openness to all. I am Pastor Naomi Cranebring, joined this morning by Pastor Jason Haldeman and Pastor Liz Bidgood-Enders. We are glad that you are here on this second Sunday of the Lenten season. A couple of announcements to share. As always, and you may have noticed in the past few weeks, we have a slightly different format for our announcements and events flyer. It has moved to a fold-in-half kind of situation. This is also available for those of you who are joining online. If you go to our church website, and there's a button that indicates announcements and order of worship, and you can find both the order of worship and the announcements flyer there for you. Just a note that on the back side of this week's announcements and events, we've added a new little section called E-Town COB Community Corner. So if you have particular things that are happening in the community that you might like to highlight, special events, for example, this week we are highlighting that next weekend is the E-Town area high school production of Mary Poppins, and we have some members of our youth who are involved in that musical, and you are invited to go and support. If you have other things like that, please feel free to reach out to the office, and we can talk about adding some of those kinds of events where we are all active in the community to our announcements flyer. In addition, on the announcements flyer today, there's also something I want to highlight. Next Saturday, there's a special event being held by On Earth Peace. It is a denominational networking group working towards gun violence prevention. We've been talking, Witness Commission has been talking about starting a gun violence prevention working group here in our congregation, and I think there might be some people who have interest in that. If you are interested, the first gathering for our group will be joining in with this OEP event next Saturday afternoon on Zoom. If you are interested, please reach out to Karen Ungamak or myself, and we will keep you in the loop on events that are happening, and as we think about how we as a congregation live out our faith in very active ways, such as speaking out against gun violence. In addition, just a reminder that each Wednesday of Lent in the evening at 6:30, we are having a Lenten Taizé service here in the sanctuary. It lasts for pretty much right about a half an hour. It is a very meaningful time, a very different style of worship than what we experience on Wednesday mornings. The live stream is available for that as well. And if that is something that you would be interested in, we invite you to join either in person or on our live stream. Starting next week and through 4 Sundays in March, Don Crable will be teaching the Discovery class as they study together select parables of Jesus. And you are invited to join during this special time of Bible study together, led by Don Crable. We move now into the beginning of our time of worship together with some music and meditative coloring. As we begin our time of worship, I wanted to spend a moment looking at this symbol that we're using on our theme slide this Lent season. It's a little confusing if you look at it, and so I wanted to kind of take it apart and talk about what this symbol means, what these elements look like. I want to start by just reading the opening paragraph from the embodied Lenten devotional. There are still copies of this and your own personal size version of the coloring calendar available on the back table if you're interested. This Lent, we long for a faith that engages all of who we are, mind, body, heart, and soul, and invites us to be present in our bodies and in the present moment. We remember the ways Jesus integrated his humanity and divinity to fulfill his radical ministry. Similarly, we too are invited to bring all of who we are to God, to live out the love that chooses to be embodied in us. The first symbol in that overlapping symbol is mind. And I invite you to take your hand and just raise it and trace with me the circle around the outside, and the arch over the eyes going down to the nose and back up, and the eyes as they have closed semicircles, and the nose going down. The second part is the heart. Again, take your finger and trace with me from one side over and around down to the bottom and back up to the other side. And do you see that in the overlapping image? And do you see that image in the overlapping image? And finally, the soul or the spirit. Trace the circle around and up and out and down and out. And do you see that in the overlapping image? As all four of those concepts, pieces of us, pieces of Jesus, come together in a unique way. I invite you to stand, if you are able, as we join together in an invocation prayer responsively. I will read the parts that say one, and I invite you to read the parts that say all, and your part goes first. God of creation, create space in our hearts, space for hope to grow like wildflowers. God of creation, create space in our hearts, space for love to echo her joyful refrain. God of creation, create space in our hearts, space for your words to saturate us like the rain. God of creation, create space in our hearts for you, your word, your grace, and your church. God of creation, create space in our hearts. God of creation, create space in our hearts. Amen.
Good morning. How are we this morning? Yeah, wonderful. Before we start, I just want to thank the congregation. That is a hymn that doesn't sound like it maybe is familiar to many of you, but that was my dad's favorite hymn. So when I was growing up, we sang that hymn a lot at our house because that was his favorite. Okay, so I have a question for you. Other than my two children, does anyone know what I do as a job? What do I do from Monday to Friday as my job? Does anybody know you know what my job is? Yeah. Anybody want to take a guess? What do you think my job is? Let someone guess first. Anybody want to take a guess? What do I look like I might do as a job? Nothing. Thank you, Annika. What do you think? Parenting. That is an important job. You're right. I do that, but I don't get paid for that job. Anybody else want to take a guess? What do I do for a job? Yeah, what do you think it is?
Teaching.
I'm a teacher. You are correct. I am a teacher. And how many of you go to school? Anybody go to school? Ah, okay. Do any of your teachers give you any quizzes at school? I'm going to give you a quiz today. Oh, okay. This is one though you do really well. Okay. It's Sunday, no quizzes on Sunday. But we can have some congregational help here because the congregation is going to have to take a quiz in a little bit after you leave for Kids Club. So we'll help them. They'll get warmed up with this quiz. Okay. What month is it right now? February. What special things happen in February? Valentine's Day, good one. Lent often happens in February, sometimes, depending on the season. Yeah. Groundhog Day. I forgot about that one. Extra credit. We got off. Now, you probably had off school last Monday. Anybody know why? Why didn't you go to school on Monday? President's Day's on. Now, there's really something special happening this week that only happens once every 4 years in February. Does anybody know what that is? It's a special thing. I wish that was last week. Damon raised his hand. What do we have? The 29th, and what's that called? When we have an extra day in February. Yeah. A leap year, right. So people who have their birthday on February 29th, they get to only have a birthday once every 4 years. Does anyone have a birthday in February? That's not you, me neither. Anybody have a birthday in February? Nope. I have 3 siblings. All of my siblings, except me and my brother-in-law, have a birthday in February. So we have a big party because we have a birthday. All right, well, I'm actually thinking of another thing that happens in February all month long. Does anybody know what February is? You already know. Does anybody know what February is? I told you. I shouldn't have told you. It's a month, and we celebrate something special the month of February. Does anybody know what we celebrate during the month of February? Black History Month. Very good. All right. I think it's very important for you to know a couple different things. The first thing I think is important is for you to get to know some people during Black History Month who have made a difference in our country and in our world that maybe we don't hear a lot about. Maybe, people like Martin Luther King Jr. we hear a lot about, but I think it's cool to get to know some people who made a lot of change, but maybe don't get quite as much recognition. And second thing I think is really important is for you to get to know some people in the Church of the Brethren who sometimes we forget to talk about. And no, you may not. Do you want to sit here in front of me so you can see? Okay, then please don't lean on me. This person we're going to talk about today is a person named Maddie. Do any of you know a Maddie?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody have this book at their house? No. Okay.
Actually, yes.
I don't either. I stole it from my mom. Okay. So. All right, so I'm going to show you the pictures. This is about a girl called Maddie. Any of my readers, what does this say? Maddie what? Maddie loves all. Okay, here we go. A little girl named Maddie lived many years ago. Her skin was brown, her eyes were too, and quickly she did grow. Oh, she did grow quickly, didn't she? She went to college, though it was hard because funds were scarce to find. But Maddie studied, worked, and prayed, though not all of the folks were kind. Do you ever have that happen to you where not everyone's kind to you? Yeah, that's tough, isn't it? After college, Maddie went to work in Arkansas. She taught the youth and showed God's love to everyone she saw. But Maddie had to leave that place because her health began to go. She got sick. She worked so hard, but folks would help her back in Ohio. Have you ever been to Ohio? No, it's a state right next to us. Oh, look what happened. What do you think happened? She met a boy. She fell in love, yeah. And there she met a Christian lad who quickly won her heart. To Newton Dolby she was wed, and married life did start. To Jeffersonville the couple moved, the Brethren church attended. Maddie loved the boys and girls, and everyone else befriended. It sounds like she's a really good friend to everyone, isn't she? Even when she's sick or doesn't feel good. She studied Greek and taught God's word and made it sound so grand that folks all said, we see, at last we understand. The Frankfurt church then said, she is so wise and kind and clever. We want to license her right now to preach God's love forever. Then 6 children filled their home, and trouble often happened to them because they were poor. But did they complain? Nope, their parents wouldn't let them. Do you ever complain sometimes? Yeah. Did your family ever get grumpy when you complain? Yeah. I see some nods back there to the family. When later, living in Urbana, they worshiped in a nearby church just fine, till some folks said, no blacks here. Now, wasn't that unkind? And I'm going to tell the adults that this couple was in their church for 7 years before the people in the church said, you're not allowed to come back here because of the color of your skin. For 7 years. That would be pretty hard, wouldn't it? They look pretty sad, don't you think? That would be really hard if someone said, you're not welcome here. But guess what Maddie did? Another church became their home, and Maddie was their preacher. For years, she served both black and white. The folks could not resist her. One of the first, but not the last, of Brethren women ministers, she loved the Lord and served the church, her brothers and her sisters. Now, this story about Maddie, I think, is really important because how many of you could relate to Maddie? How many of you sometimes feel like people are unkind? Yeah, for some reason or another. Yeah, but Maddie chose to love. No matter what happened, even if it was hard or when it was really great, she chose to love. So I have a test for you today. Can you do this test?
Yeah.
I know it's Sunday. I have 3 heart stickers for you. I would like you to keep one of them. But God's love is only really special when we keep it in our hearts, but then when we give it away to someone else. That's the real magic of God's love. When we keep it in our hearts and then we love him so much, we give it away to someone else. No, thank you.
I don't need stickers.
So I would like you to keep 1 sticker for yourself. And on the way out to Kids Club today, I'd like you to take one of your stickers and put them on somebody else's shoulder or on their front, or probably not in their hair because that would be uncomfortable and unpleasant. But find a spot where you could give someone else a heart. And then, this might even be the hardest one. While you're at somewhere this week, maybe at school or maybe at home with your brother or sister, maybe if you have a hard time getting along with your siblings, maybe offer them a heart in a hard moment. When maybe someone isn't being kind to you, or maybe someone looks like they're having a sad day, you may say, oh, I could give my last heart. And you could offer God's love at a time when maybe it's sad for them. Could you do that? And if you do that, I want you to tell me about it next week. I want you to tell me who you gave your hearts to share God's love. All right? So we're going to sing a song while you leave to get ready for go. This song is called I Have Decided to Follow Jesus. And on the order of worship, it says that just the children are going to sing first. But if you're a child at heart and you know this song, well, let's include everyone. Feel free to sing along. After the first verse, I'm going to send you back to Kids Club with your hearts. So while we're singing, I'm going to hand you your hearts, okay? All right, Kim, go ahead. I have decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. Turning back, no turning back. The world behind me, God's love before me. The world behind
At this time, I would invite you into a time of silence and meditation, and then I will conclude that time with a spoken prayer. So may we all just take a deep breath and enter into some moments of silence. This is a prayer adapted from our embodied liturgy that we've been using throughout Lent. Creator God, we thank you for the beauty that we can find around us each and every day. Even while we cry out for the pain and the grief that we experience. Be present with us in our times of joy and celebration, as well as in our moments of darkness and despair. We hold you close in our times of need and care for those around us that we might be able to hold in comfort. We especially remember the E-Town College campus this week with the loss of a student on Monday. We think of those in our own families and congregation who are struggling with loss. We lift up the regions of the world that suffer the violence at the hands of those in power. May your justice and goodness, your love and mercy guide those who are seduced by worldly power and ideologies. Amid the anxiety and chaos, help us to center you in our lives. We turn our hearts and our eyes to you. For you walked this earth, bare feet in the Garden of Eden, bare feet on the road to Golgotha. You took on flesh and bones, a beating heart and human hands, skin that could bruise and a heart that could ache, all to teach us how to love. So, Creator God, this Lent we pray, take all of me in return. Take my feet, because I keep walking backward. And take my legs, because I long to run to you, but keep getting lost. Take my back, so that I may stand for your justice, and take my breath in my lungs, so that even oxygen reminds me of you. Take my hands, because love keeps slipping through my fingers like rain, and take my arms, so that I might learn how to hold on to hope. Take my neck, so that I might hold my head high for you, and take my ears, so that I might hear the Spirit rush by me like a mighty wind. Take my eyes, so that I might finally see like you see, life in the weeds, life in the darkness, beauty in the mess. And take my mouth, so that I might sing of love and tell stories of grace. God of love, God of life, you took on skin and bones and walked this earth. So in turn, I understand this faith to be an embodied one, a journey where all of me belongs to all of you, and I am better for it. Amen.
This morning, we are very excited to welcome new members as part of our congregation. Scott King and Jan Glass King will be joining by transfer of membership. We will take a moment to introduce both of you, and then we will have a time of reaffirmation of faith and congregational response.
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Peggy Over, and it's a joy to introduce Jan King. I've known Jan for many, many years, going back to the late 60s and early 70s, when I first met John at Juniata. Jan and John both grew up in a small town of Roaring Spring. It's about 2 hours west of here, out in the other part of central Pennsylvania. And they grew up in that town, and they were very active in the same church. Jan will be glad to tell you that John was the older of the two. Jan grew up on a lovely farm on the edge of town, around the corner from where John and I later lived, and I loved to walk up to the farm and visit with her family. The years fly by, and now we all live in Lebanon County, and here we are at the E-Town Church of the Brethren. Jan is retired from the pastoral ministry and serving most recently at the Wyomissing Church near Reading. Jan is very creative and loves doing a variety of crafts. At NOAC, she led a workshop on herbs in the Bible, where we made a potpourri. If you want any ideas on creative crafts, just talk to Jan. Together, Jan and Scott have 4 adult sons and 5 grandchildren that they love to share many good times with. So big welcome to Jan and Scott.
Thank you, Peggy. It's wonderful to join our former neighbors here at Elizabethtown. And I've been told to keep this very short, which is hard when you're used to being in the pulpit every Sunday, right? So I will keep it very short. I just want to say that it's really super important to me to be involved in an active faith community. And as Scott and I have visited here over the last year, we know that you have a wide reach, not only within your community, but around the world. So as we share Christ's love with each other and with the world, I'm glad to partner with you, and thank you for having us.
Good morning. My name is John Over. And I'm sorry, Rachel, I misread the directions that Naomi gave us. I thought she said keep it less than 60 minutes. Anyways, I've known Scott for over 50 years. We became acquainted while attending the Roaring Spring Church of the Brethren together. Then Peggy and I moved to Lebanon almost 11 years ago. Scott is a retired educator, serving as a teacher, principal, and superintendent. Scott was also a Rotarian in the Morrison's Cove Club, where we served together. Scott also enjoys volunteering with Brethren Disaster Ministries, golfing, and walking his 2 dogs, but he explains that he doesn't walk the dogs together. Scott contends that Peggy and I pioneered the way for them to move down here. I don't have enough time to tell all the stories that we have together, but I will say that he is a serious Phillies fanatic, and I mean serious. When we were at NOAC and the Phillies were playing, you couldn't find Scott unless he was glued to his radio listening to the game. Anyway, I'm very happy to welcome Scott and Jan to Elizabethtown Church of the Brethren.
Thank you, John. Very honored to be here. As Jan said, we've been attending here for about a year, and we really enjoy the opportunities. I know myself on my faith journey, I've been a member of the Brethren Church, as they've said, since the early 1970s. Even though I was raised as a Lutheran, I saw the light. and I love the Brethren Church and look forward to continued opportunities to serve and to grow in my faith. Thank you.
Jan and Scott, you have previously made confession of your faith in another setting and have been members of Christ's church. We rejoice in your decision to become members of this congregation, partnering in covenant relationship with the believers who worship and serve God in this place. We now invite you to reaffirm your faith and consider your commitment to this congregation. Knowing that Christians never fully arrive, but are always in the process of becoming, do you now reaffirm your faith in Jesus Christ as the revealer of God's love and purpose for the world? If so, please say, I do. I do. Believing that Christianity is experienced in a faith community that supports and strengthens us in times of weakness and doubt, and that learns from us as we learn from it, do you promise to live and share with this congregation in the bonds of Christian fellowship, giving and receiving Christian love, sharing and bearing one another's joy and pain? If so, please say, I do. As you unite with the Elizabethtown Church of the Brethren, will you worship, serve, and share in this congregation's ministries, supporting them by your earnest prayers, regular attendance, loyal service, and faithful stewardship? If so, please say, I will. I invite the congregation to stand if you are able, and I invite you to reaffirm your commitment to Christ, to this church, and to these new members of this gathered body. Please join in the all portions of the response on the slides. These persons now presented to you have witnessed to their faith in Jesus Christ and offer themselves as companions in our obedience to Christ. It is our privilege and joy to welcome them into our family of faith. We welcome you with joy and affection into this household of faith. We pledge to you our help, our prayers, our concern, that we may all increase in the knowledge and love of God. We trust God for strength to follow with you in Christ's way, keeping together the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. We joyfully accept you as partners, both in the care of our spiritual family and in our mission to share God's love and peace in the world. Amen. I invite you to be seated. We are so glad that you have decided to reaffirm your faithful commitment to Christ and to covenant with this congregation as we seek to follow Jesus together. Welcome.
Good morning. My name is Isabel Castillo. I am the director of the Center for Racial and Gender Equity at YWCA Lancaster. And I want to thank Nancy and the Immigration Support Group and Pastor Jason for having me with you all this morning to share a little bit about my story. And thanks for whoever was leading, I forget the name, the children's story. And I just want to invite you all to also continue to learn about others in our community. We are going to be having an African American Heritage Walking Tour in Lancaster City on Thursday, February 29th at 10:30, meeting at Crispus Attucks Community Center to learn about Black history and the legacy of working to eliminate racism in Lancaster City. And also want to invite you all to unite against racism at our 26th annual 5K Race Against Racism on Saturday, April 27th, and that's at Musser Park, also in Lancaster City. And we know that a 5K will not eliminate racism, but it can unite us together in community. And it's a fundraiser that supports the center where I work for, the Center for Racial and Gender Equity. So all the proceeds from the race supports our work in the community. Thanks again for having me.
Your mercy never fails me. In all my days, I've been held in your hands. From the moment that I wake up until I lay my head, I will sing of the goodness of God. All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, I will sing of the goodness of God. I love your voice. You have led me through the fire, and in darkest night, you are close like no other. I've known you as a father, I've known you as a friend, and I have lived in the goodness of God. All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, I will sing of the goodness of God. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down, I surrender now. I give you everything. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down, I surrender now. I give you everything. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, I will sing of the goodness of God. I will sing of the goodness of God.
Good morning. Clearly, I'm the short member of this team here. All right. Every time I go to flick something on my shoulder here, I notice my heart and realize that I am loved. That felt really beautiful this morning. Today's sermon is all about choices, And I want you to think back as a child to when was the first time you were given a choice about something? Oftentimes we hear that children get frustrated because they are not given choices. So in education, we're often told that classrooms work best when we can give children choices that don't stress out teachers too much. My earliest memory of a choice, however, was at a Christmas party. I was probably about 4 years old, and my parents took us to a Christmas party with some family friends. And as they would tell it, I was a little bit nixy. I did not behave. I don't remember not behaving. But what I do remember is that we had been told that when we got home from the Christmas party, we were going to be able to stay up late. That was number one. And we were going to be able to watch It's a Wonderful Life on television. Now, for those of you who don't remember those days, television used to be that you could watch the movie one time each year with commercial, and if you didn't get home in time, you had to wait a whole nother year till you could watch It's a Wonderful Life again. I see some nods. So this was a huge deal for me to be able to stay up and watch It's a Wonderful Life. And in the car on the way home, my father decided that he would choose 2 acceptable punishments for me, and I had the drive home to decide which punishment I was going to accept in order to move forward with our evening to be allowed to watch It's a Wonderful Life. I won't tell you what those 2 choices were, only that I accepted the more painful one with the promise that I could watch It's a Wonderful Life and not have to go to bed early. I think after that, when I think of choices, I often think of taking quizzes in school. How many of you remember taking multiple choice quizzes in school, especially ones that you had to fill in the bubble letters? And wasn't it always exciting when the choices worked out so they made patterns? I don't know, that's just me maybe. So I thought I would start this morning by giving you a bit of a musical pop quiz. So I am on sabbatical. I feel like I need some help with pop quiz. So this is what I've been listening to this week. Do you know how many genres of music in 2023 are recognized on Spotify? Now, if you don't know what Spotify is a digital platform. I make no assumptions nor judgments. I learn things from my students every day. Spotify is a digital platform that categorizes, people can put all sorts of music, and they sort it by genre or style. Does anyone want to guess how many genres of music as of the end of 2023 were recognized on Spotify? C. That was a really good try, everyone, but you're wrong. The actual answer is D. As of the end of 2023, 6,000 different genres of music were recognized on Spotify. In 2017, if I had asked you the same question, the answer would be B. So you see in a mere few years how wide and broad our musical tastes have changed and widened. As we journey through Lent together, one of the things we have talked a lot about is what does it mean to be embodied and to use our body, not just what we can see, but also the different parts of ourselves. Our bodies, yes, but our senses and our feelings and our emotions and our preferences. So to that end, we're going to play a game that my coworker uses a lot in her classroom to get to know each other. And I thought since it's reception of New Members Day, it's always good to get to know each other just a little bit better. So we're going to play a game called This or That. Perhaps you have played it before. I'm going to give you 2 choices of very, I think, weighty and important decisions that need to be made. If you agree with choice A, you're going to move yourself by standing and moving toward the aisle. If you choose that, or choice B, I'd like you to stand and move toward the window. Now, if you can't stand or don't feel comfortable, simply maybe direct your attention towards your preference. If you're joining us online, feel free to put any of your preferences, A or B, into the chat box. Once you've made your choice, chat for just a moment, and I do mean that just a moment, because John took up a lot of my time with his extra long introduction. Just a moment, and then we will come back. I have 3 of them to do, all right? So if you choose choice 1, you're going to move toward the aisle. Choice 2, move toward the window, and chat with those around you about your choice. Very difficult decisions to make, so I'll just brief you. Here we go. Here's number 1. Would you rather spend your vacation in a city or at a mountain cabin? Oh, we had some people who knew right away. Oh, okay. All right. Share your choice. Talk to those around you. Wow. Come on back. That was an easy one. This one causes a lot of dissension in our family, so we'll see if that's true for yours. Creamy or crunchy? What's your peanut butter preference? Creamy or crunchy? All right, come on back. Does anyone want to admit, like in our family, you have both kinds in your cupboard just to save? Okay, thank you. We've just given up. All right, and number 3, would you rather cook or do the dishes? That one seemed to have a lot of conversation. Curiouser and curiouser. While for some of you, these may not seem like very contentious or weighty decisions, unless you, like me, live in a creamy versus crunchy scenario at our home, the passage that we are going to look at today feels weighty. The choice that we're going to look at in this passage feels weighty. I don't know if you are like me, but when I read the book of Mark, I often feel like I'm swimming lap after lap after lap in a swimming pool that never seems to end. I feel like this narrative never stops. It moves along at sort of this breakneck speed, and I often don't feel that there is a moment to pause, to rest, to breathe, to sit with what Mark is trying to tell me. So if this is you, we are going to pause, and we're going to hear this passage the way the early listeners would have heard it, by hearing it. So as Liz comes forward and shares this passage with you, I would ask you to do the following 3 things. Try to let go of any preconceived notions you have about this text, as it probably will be familiar to many of you. Try to allow your brain to live in the moment. Don't skip ahead to what comes next. And number 3, can you try to hear it as if you are hearing it for the very first time?
And to help with that, this is the Eugene Peterson's The Message version, so the language will be a little bit different, even for those who know it well. Jesus then began to explain things to the disciples. It is necessary that the Son of Man, precede an ordeal of suffering, to be tried and found guilty by the elders, the priests, the religion scholars, to be put to death, and after 3 days rise up to life. But Peter grabbed him in protest. Turning and seeing the disciples wavering, wondering what to believe, Jesus confronted Peter. Peter, get out of my way. Satan, get lost. You have no idea how God is at work. Then calling the crowd to join the disciples, he said, any of you who intend to follow me, to come with me, have to get out of the way. You're not in the driver's seat. I am. Do not run from suffering, embrace it. Follow me, and I'll show you how. Self-help is no help at all. So self-sacrifice is the way, my way, that leads to life, real life. He said this so that they could hear it simply, clearly. If any of you, what would you gain to gain the whole world, but give up you, the real you? What could you trade your soul for? If any of you are embarrassed by me and the way that I'm leading when you are around your fickle and unfocused friends, know that you will be an even greater embarrassment when the Son of Man comes in all the splendor of God his Father with an army of the holy angels.
When Naomi asked if I'd preach this Sunday, I thought maybe it was a hazing activity when I saw the passage. And the team went around with some very interesting inside jokes this week that I won't trouble you with now, but were very interesting as we wrestled with this passage from Mark. Like many of you, I've heard this story before, perhaps with some of those demonstrative words like, "Get behind me, Satan," which we'll deal with in a minute. But as I dug into the passage this week, I was amazed to discover the parsing out of two Greek words that Mark chose to use that really helped me to slow down, partially because I don't speak Greek, so my apologies for pronunciation to those of you who do, but also to understand what this text is saying in a very different way. The first is this. Upisomo. In Greek, upisomo means behind me or after me. Unsurprisingly, if you know this text in a more traditional translation, the first time this phrase appears is in Jesus' rebuke of Peter. The story lays out just a bit like this. Jesus has decided to speak plainly to his disciples about what is coming. He is going to tell them how the future is going to unfold, and he's not going to hide it from them. He's not going to say it in a riddle. He is going to speak it plainly. The path forward, as many of you know, does not align with Peter's ideas or those of the disciples about what a Messiah should do or about how a Messiah should behave. He has the nerve, or I would question perhaps the courage, to question Jesus openly. Jesus responds by calling Peter Satan in every translation I looked at. Now, Satan is not the horned, pitchfork-carrying devil you might imagine, but in this context, Jesus is using the original meaning of this word, an adversary. This word has been pulled out several times throughout Scripture to talk and name others who have gotten and come in contact or conflict with the Creator's plan. At that moment, Peter becomes an adversary to this different, radical, new kingdom path of Jesus. Jesus tells him to upisomo, get behind me. In other words, if Peter was unwilling or unable to be open to this new way of Jesus, he would become simply another adversary in a world already that did not understand this radical new way of Jesus. But here's the fascinating part. In the very next verse, verse 34, Jesus invites the crowd to become part of this conversation. And if he says that if anybody wants to follow in this new way, they must give up their own agenda, take up their cross, and follow him. But what is interesting is that Mark repeats this Greek phrase, upisomo, to go behind me or to after me, that he used just one verse earlier. The second use of this phrase, upisomo, is not necessary in Greek, since the Greek word to follow automatically carries with it the sense of going behind me. You don't have to spell it out. So usually it isn't. Why? Why would Mark do this? Why would he repeat this phrase, upisomo? Perhaps because he wants to create a parallel to his challenge to Peter from the previous verse. Or he wants to restate to Peter, to upisomo. Perhaps he is letting his listeners know that everyone will upisomo, get behind Jesus. But our choice really lies in how we choose to do that. The first choice is like Peter's initial reaction to Jesus' kingdom plan, to hold on to everything the world tells us matters: wealth, status, power, might. These things put us in direct contradiction to Jesus' call of love. We upisomo, we get behind Jesus, we turn and move in the opposite direction because his way does not match what feels comfortable or easy or helps us fit in. Or, as in verse 34, we can upisomo, get behind Jesus as a disciple. We can learn, we can watch, we can observe, we can look at total love in action. The birth of new kingdom come. What does that kind of getting behind look like? I think the last three verses give us a clue with another Greek word. Another word that Mark chooses to use in this passage is the Greek word sehi. Our English scriptures often translate this word as life, a word that shows up 4 times, partially in the translation from Eugene Peterson, but in more traditional translations. However, in Greek, sehi really means soul. It's much more than this physical body or physical life that we lead. It is actually the very core of who we are, the very core of our being. When Jesus asks us to give up our life, our sihi, to opisimu him, to follow him, he's not talking about being someone's doormat. He's not talking about rejecting ourselves and the care for who we are as people, or always choosing a path that involves sorrow and pain or self-denial. But what he is talking about is becoming in our soul, our sihi, the very core of our being, the person that the Creator intended us to be. This is the kingdom living. This is our choice. And it will change who we are and the world. I've read this story to the children about Martha Cunningham Dolby, or Maddie. Are any of you familiar with Martha Dolby? I see some nods. She's become someone who's very fascinating to me, and as we leave Black History Month and we enter Women's History Month, she is someone who I've sat with a lot this week as I've thought about what this means to use our very core of our being to get behind Jesus. I'm going to read some excerpts from an article that appeared in Brethren Life and Thought called Recovering African American Voice and Experience in Brethren History, a biographical essay on Maddie Cunningham Dolby. I'd encourage you sometime to look it up and read it if you haven't. It is fascinating, and I don't have the time to sit and read it all. Maddie and her brother Joe were the first African American students admitted to Manchester College in 1900. And it was very clear at the beginning of their time there that they experienced a lot of racism at the university, so much so that they were not allowed to eat on campus for the first year. While Maddie's daughter says that her mother never talked about experiencing any kind of discrimination at the college, there are several resources that say this was their reality. However, in the second year of their time at Manchester, a fellow student named Otho Winger decided to gather a group of like-minded students who would invite the Dolbys to eat with them in the school cafeteria. That group surrounded Maddie and Joe and ate with them every day in the school cafeteria. So much so that after that year, pictures of the two of them begin to pop up in the Glee Club, playing sports. That one act changed the course of their time at Manchester. Shortly after graduating, Martha, or Maddie, was invited by the General Mission Board to establish a German Baptist Brethren church in Arkansas, in the small town of Palestine. Located in the northeastern part of the state, Palestine was near the county seat of Forest City, which is named after the Confederate general Nathan Bedford Forrest, the founder of the Ku Klux Klan. It was a part of a terribly impoverished region where most African Americans worked as sharecroppers and lived in dirt floor shacks while surviving harsh winters in substandard structures. Maddie did not shy from taking on work in Arkansas, and she realized that the magnitude of her quest, which was hampered by intense poverty and local racism, and she was always pressing the General Board for funding. She continued to fight and advocate for the people of Palestine, oftentimes not receiving the funding that was sent to other congregations or even overseas. In 1907, she continued to struggle with health, and she moved back home to Indiana and began working with the Frankfurt Brethren in Ohio. We don't know how much money the district gave or the Brotherhood gave to Maddie's founding congregation in Frankfurt. However, in an effort to express their commitment, the Frankfurt congregation took an unprecedented step when on December 31st, 1911, during Love Feast, they installed her not only as the first woman, but as the first African American minister in the Church of the Brethren. She worked there for many years. However, the family had to move, and ended in Urbana, where a very different congregation greeted them. I think it's important to notice, and this was not told to the children, but the drive from where Maddie and her family lived to this new congregation was 25 miles, which maybe doesn't feel too difficult for us, but in 1917 would have meant a significant commitment. However, their commitment to remain brethren was strong. For 7 years, they drove 25 miles one way to the small church of the Brethren that was closest to their home. 25 miles. As the only African American couple or family in the congregation. In 1924, the leadership in that congregation changed, and they were met one morning at the door of the church and told that they were no longer welcome as before and encouraged to find a place of worship closer to home. At that point, Maddie and her family made what they felt was a courageous protest step and left the Church of the Brethren. However, I think it's interesting. A couple years later, her husband passed away, and the man who gave the eulogy at his funeral, was Otho Winger, the man who had sat with them daily at the lunch table at Manchester College. What does this have to do with Opi Simo or Siha? One thing I appreciate about Peter's story, and the reason it is included in so many of the gospel texts, is that it represents a step on our journey. Peter's story is a lot of ups and downs. Peter's story is one of humanity. I think so often we in the church, either little c or big C, have a hard time telling the painful parts of the story, the parts that don't always make us look so good. We like to tell the parts where we follow into these new and beautiful new paths of kingdom living, but we often don't like to tell the parts where we get behind Jesus in a different way, becoming an adversary. May we continue to tell more stories like Maddie's, a story of deep commitment to the living into who we are, even when that's hard, and even perhaps when those around us are not ready to live into that following. And may we be as open as a congregation to living and getting behind Jesus in this new way of kingdom living. Opi Simo. As we sing our closing hymn, Lord, You Have Come to the Lakeshore, you will notice it is written in Spanish and in English. I would invite you, in whatever language feels most comfortable or most uncomfortable, to sing in whatever language you choose.
Please stand with us. You're good. Sure.
To
O young and fearless prophet, we need your presence here. Amid our pride and glory, to see your face appear. Once more to hear your challenge above our noisy day. Again to lead us forward along God's holy way. As we walk into this third week of Lent, leave behind anything that is simply noise in your ears. And opiso mo, get behind the teacher who created you at the core of who you are. May our Sehi soul radiate a life-changing kingdom love that is inclusive, welcoming, and seeks always to love like our young and fearless prophet. Amen.